Now, let me just pause and tell you something important. If you stay with me till the end of the story, you'll get the answer that brought you to this video in the first place. The question that's clawing at the back of your mind right now, is she still alive? Yes, we're going to get there. I promise. But to understand what really happened, you need to see the whole picture. Because this story isn't just about a note. It's about a mother's unbreakable bond, a cold case that's been unsolved for nearly 2 decades, and a twist that no one, not even the detectives working the case, saw coming. So, don't just listen. Immerse yourself. Because once this unfolds, you'll realize you've been part of something much bigger than you expected. If you've ever lost someone, if you've ever looked through an old photo album and wondered what could have been, then this story is going to hit close to home. It starts in a way that's heartbreakingly normal. A single mom named Dana Mitchell, a school teacher living in a small, tree-lined neighborhood in Syracuse, New York. Back in the early 2000s, Dana had a little girl named Lily, bright, funny, loved animals, used to draw unicorns on everything. Lily had this habit of hiding little notes and drawings around the house, tucked in drawers, slipped between couch cushions, even once taped under the dining room table. It was her game, her way of making the world magical. But on a rainy Saturday morning in April 2005, Lily vanished while playing in their fenced backyard. There was no forced entry, no sign of struggle, no witnesses. One moment she was there, and the next gone. It made headlines for weeks, dominated local news, triggered statewide searches, and left a mother hollowed out with grief. But over time, as leads dried up and years passed, the case faded from public view. People moved on. Dana tried to. But she never let go, not really. Fast forward to present day. Dana's in her 40s now, remarried, trying to rebuild, though a part of her life still lives in that distant spring. On a rainy afternoon, eerily similar to the one Lily disappeared, Dana decides to do some spring cleaning. She's going through old boxes in the attic, half distracted, flipping through dusty photo albums and kindergarten art projects when she spots a stack of children's books. Most of them are stained or crinkled, memories of bedtime stories long gone. But there's one, The Adventures of Penny the Panda, that instantly catches her eye. It was Lily's favorite. Dana hadn't seen it in years. She opens it, slowly, almost without thinking. And there, between pages 24 and 25, something falls out. A folded piece of paper, yellowed with time. Not something that would have come with the book. Dana picks it up. And the second she sees the handwriting, her hands start to shake. Because she knows this writing. It's messy, with backwards letters, hearts over the eyes. It's Lily's, without a doubt. Now stop right here and think. What would you do in that moment? If the child you lost almost 20 years ago left behind something you never knew existed? Would you cry? Freeze? Call the police? Dana unfolds the note with trembling fingers. The ink has faded, but the words are still readable. And what they say, it's not just a message. It's a clue. A trail. Something that Dana, and the entire investigation, missed the first time around. It reads, "If you find this, I had to go. I heard the whispers. I didn't want to, but I'll leave more. Love, Lily." That was it. Simple. Innocent. But chilling. Whispers? Leave more? Had to go? None of that made sense, unless Lily wasn't taken but went. I want you to take a moment to really sit with that idea, because that's where things start to twist. Dana immediately calls the detective who originally handled Lily's case, retired now, but still haunted by the unsolved mystery. He comes over within the hour, and the look on his face when he reads the note, it's the same mix of disbelief and dawning possibility that you're probably feeling right now. What if they were wrong all these years? What if Lily wasn't kidnapped, but somehow lured or coerced into leaving? What if she had been trying to communicate all along? And here's where it gets even stranger. When the detective takes the note for analysis, he notices something. The ink, based on the paper and fading, doesn't look 20 years old. In fact, forensic testing would later suggest the note was written within the last 5 years. But how could that be? That book hadn't been touched in nearly 2 decades. It was sealed in a box, unopened. No one had access to it, except Dana. So then the question becomes, did someone return to that house? Did Lily come back? Or was someone else leaving notes in her name? This mystery only deepens. Dana starts searching every old box, every book, every corner of the house for more notes, and she finds two more, both cryptic, both in the same handwriting. One hidden behind a photo frame in Lily's old bedroom. Another wedged into the back panel of a music box. They're all signed Lily. And each one reveals just a bit more, but not enough to fully understand what happened. Only one thing is clear now. Someone wanted Dana to find these. And they knew exactly where to hide them. From here, what unfolds is a journey that spans states, unearths long-buried connections, and reveals truths that not even the most seasoned investigators predicted. It's a case that involves a forgotten neighbor, an anonymous tip from an online forum, a shelter hundreds of miles away, and a final, jaw-dropping revelation involving a photograph hidden in plain sight. But before we get to that, I need you to do one thing: stay. Because the next part of this story will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people around you. About how far a mother would go to uncover the truth. And about how one missing child's voice could still echo, even after all these years. So now the real question is, was Lily trying to come home? Or was someone keeping her away on purpose? The answer lies in the last note Dana finds. And that one? Well, it doesn't just shake her world. It changes everything. In the days that followed the discovery of the note, Dana found herself caught in a strange limbo, grief and hope folding in on each other, twisting her emotions into something unrecognizable. She stopped going to work, stopped answering friends' texts, and started spending every waking hour retracing her steps through the past. Not just through the house, but through old memories, letters, home videos, anything that might carry some overlooked clue. Her husband, Rob, tried to support her at first, but it wasn't long before she could see it in his face, that subtle shift from concern to exhaustion. He wasn't around back when Lily disappeared. They met years after, when Dana had finally started to smile again. But this obsession with notes and hidden messages from a daughter he had never known? He couldn't understand. And honestly, Dana didn't blame him. Because the truth was, even she didn't fully understand what was happening. All she knew was that something had been set in motion, something that wasn't finished yet, and she had no choice but to follow it wherever it led. It was during one of her late-night deep dives through old storage bins that Dana found something else, something she'd forgotten about entirely. A spiral-bound notebook with a cartoon cat on the front, its pages filled with a little girl's dreams and doodles. It was Lily's journal. Not something she wrote in often, but every once in a while, she'd scribble down thoughts. Most of it was innocent. Drawings of butterflies, misspelled notes about what she wanted to be when she grew up, imaginary adventures with talking animals. But there was one entry that stood out. It was dated just a few weeks before she disappeared. The handwriting was rushed and uneven, and the content deeply unsettling. Lily had written, "Mom said don't talk to the fence man. He's not real. But he is. He knows my name." Dana read that line over and over, heart pounding. There had never been any mention of a fence man during the original investigation. No record of neighbors reporting anything suspicious. So either it had been dismissed back then, or it had been missed entirely. At this point, Dana decided to do something she hadn't done in years. She reached out to Lily's old babysitter, Kelsey Brooks, who had been just 17 when Lily went missing. Now in her mid-30s and living in Albany, Kelsey answered Dana's message almost immediately and agreed to meet the next day. They sat at a small diner off the interstate, and for a moment, Dana saw that same awkward teenager in the woman across from her, though time had hardened her face and dimmed her once bubbly spirit. Kelsey confessed something she had never told police. The week before Lily vanished, there had been a man watching the house. She remembered it vividly now, how he stood by the corner of the fence, pretending to fix a bike or talk on the phone. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, especially since she didn't want to worry Dana or get anyone in trouble. But when Lily went missing, Kelsey said guilt consumed her. Still, by the time she considered telling someone, the investigation had already shifted away from local leads. There were no cameras back then, no footage. Just memory and fear. That's when Dana began compiling a list. Anyone who'd been around their neighborhood at the time of Lily's disappearance. Former neighbors, delivery drivers, substitute teachers, even the ice cream truck guy. Some had moved, some had passed, and some didn't remember anything at all. But a few names came up more than once, one in particular, Richard Bell. He had lived 4 houses down, worked nights, rarely interacted with anyone. The only thing people remembered about him was that he had a collection of vintage radios and never opened his blinds. When Dana looked him up, she found something she didn't expect. Richard had died in 2012. A stroke, no criminal record, no family. But a strange detail stood out from an old newspaper article covering his estate sale. Among the odd items auctioned off was a child's music box, a white porcelain ballerina on a velvet stage. The same exact model Dana remembered buying Lily for her 5th birthday. And the same one she had recently found the second note hidden inside. Now the story was shifting. Questions piled up faster than answers. Had Richard Bell somehow taken Lily? Had he been watching the house, as Kelsey believed? But if so, why would the music box have returned to Dana's home years later? Was someone playing a twisted game with her emotions? And why would Lily, if she was alive, start leaving clues only now? Dana kept digging, driven by something stronger than hope, an instinct, a mother's gut that refused to quiet. She started receiving anonymous messages on her Facebook page. They were vague, things like, "Look closer at what you missed," or "The truth is closer than you think." No profile photo, no name. At first, Dana thought it was a troll, someone who had seen the recent buzz surrounding Lily's cold case online. But one message changed everything. It simply said, "Try the treehouse." Lily's treehouse had been falling apart for years, half collapsed behind the fence. But Dana went out there anyway, climbing the brittle ladder with trembling hands. Inside, there was nothing obvious. Dust, old toys, a broken flashlight. But after hours of searching, she found something wedged in the floorboards. A child's bracelet, plastic, pink, with the letters LILY spelled out in cheap beads. Her breath caught. It was the same bracelet Lily had been wearing the day she disappeared. That detail had been reported in the missing child flyers. It was public. But the bracelet itself? It had never been found. Dana called the detective again. His name was Sam Carter. He had worked the original case tirelessly, but had burned out after too many dead ends. He still remembered Lily vividly. When Dana handed him the bracelet, his first words were, "There's no way this has been here the whole time." He was right. The area had been searched. Not once, but twice. So the bracelet had to have been placed there recently. Someone was coming back. Someone was deliberately planting these objects, notes, the bracelet, the music box. It was methodical, controlled, which brought up an even darker possibility. This wasn't just about Lily. This was about Dana. About watching her, manipulating her, and maybe, just maybe, testing her. As the days turned into weeks, Dana felt herself spiraling deeper. She couldn't sleep, barely ate. She set up cameras around the house, checked them obsessively. Her husband grew more distant, often leaving for long drives or falling asleep on the couch. One night, she overheard him on the phone, whispering. She couldn't make out much, but one phrase stood out. "She's starting to unravel. It's worse than I thought." That's when Dana started to wonder if the mystery wasn't just out there, but right in her own home. Could Rob be involved? He hadn't been part of Lily's life, but he was around the moment the notes started showing up. Could he be trying to push her into madness? Gaslight her? Or was that just the paranoia talking? At this point, no one could be ruled out. Not Kelsey. Not Rob. Not even the late Richard Bell. The idea that someone had been watching Dana for all these years, waiting for the right moment to strike, sent a chill through her spine. And the worst part? Every clue led to another question. Every answer opened another door. The final note, if there was one, had yet to surface. But Dana was convinced it would. And when it did, it wouldn't just answer the mystery of where Lily had gone. It would expose a secret someone was desperate to keep buried. Because this wasn't just about a missing child anymore. This was about control, about power, about a game that had been playing out in the shadows for nearly 2 decades, and Dana had just stepped back onto the board. But nothing could have prepared her for what she would find next. In a place she had sworn never to return. A place that held the memory of the last time she ever saw Lily alive. And what she found there, it would change everything. Dana had always believed that time softened the past, that pain, if ignored long enough, would dull at the edges and eventually fade. But ever since she found that first note in Lily's book, it felt as if the past had clawed its way back into the present, sharper than ever. The clues, the messages, the bracelet, they had pulled her into a chase she hadn't prepared for, and the deeper she went, the less stable everything became. One morning, Dana woke to find the drawer where she had locked away Lily's journal completely empty. The spiral notebook, with the fence man entry, was gone. Nothing else had been taken, just that one item. Her heart sank. She had placed it in a box with a combination lock inside her closet. Rob denied ever touching it, and the detective said there were no signs of forced entry. But Dana couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been in the house. Not just sneaking in, but watching, waiting, choosing exactly the right moment to take what they needed. That same day, Dana received an envelope in the mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single photo, grainy, black and white, clearly old. It showed Lily, smiling, standing in front of what looked like a barn or storage unit. Behind her, barely visible, was the outline of a man. His face was turned away, but he was tall, wearing a jacket with a familiar patch, one Dana immediately recognized as the uniform of a now-defunct trucking company that used to operate in the area. She took the photo to Sam Carter, who managed to track down the location, a now-abandoned lot just outside town, miles from where Lily was last seen. Dana went there alone the next morning, heart pounding as she pushed open the rusted metal door. Inside, the air was thick with mold and decay. Dust floated in beams of light streaming through cracks in the walls. She found pieces of old furniture, crates, and newspapers stacked in a corner, but nothing that screamed significance. At least not until she saw the writing on the far wall. Faint, almost erased by time, were the words, "She remembers." And below that, scratched into the surface, the initials LR. It was impossible to know how long that message had been there. But it confirmed something Dana had begun to suspect. This wasn't just about following a trail. This was about memory. About someone trying to awaken something buried deep. A truth she may have once known and since forgotten. But before she could dwell on it, another shift occurred, one that threatened to derail everything. Detective Carter called late that evening with disturbing news. His superiors had ordered him to step back from the case. No explanation, no paperwork. Just a phone call from someone high up who said that reopening a 2-decade-old missing child file could cause unnecessary panic. Dana couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was it possible that someone with influence was actively trying to stop the investigation? And if so, why? Even more confusing was what happened next. Kelsey, the former babysitter who had first mentioned the man by the fence, suddenly went quiet. Dana texted her multiple times, called, left voicemails. Days passed. Then, without warning, she received a short, cold message. "Please don't contact me again. I was wrong about what I said. Forget everything." It didn't sound like the same woman who had been so shaken during their diner meeting. Dana began to worry that Kelsey had been threatened or worse. And then there was Rob. His late-night calls, his increasing absence, the way he avoided looking her in the eye. One night, Dana followed him when he left the house after midnight. She stayed far enough behind not to be noticed, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. He didn't go to a friend's house or a bar. Instead, he pulled into the parking lot of a closed elementary school, the same one Lily had attended. He got out, met someone in the shadows, and after a short, tense conversation, handed them something small. She couldn't see what it was, but it looked like a USB drive or memory stick. Her breath caught. What was he doing there? And why did it look like he was hiding something related to Lily? The next day, Dana confronted him. Rob denied everything, said she was paranoid, that grief was twisting her mind. But his defensiveness only made her more suspicious. She searched his desk later that night and found a locked drawer she'd never noticed before. Inside was a manila folder labeled only with a date, April 12, 2005, the exact day Lily went missing. But before she could open it, she heard a sound. Someone was in the house. Not Rob, he was out again. She clutched the folder and hid in the closet, heart hammering as footsteps creaked down the hall. It was a quiet, deliberate movement. Not a burglar. Someone who knew the house. The footsteps paused just outside her bedroom, then slowly retreated. When she finally worked up the courage to look, no one was there. But the front door was slightly ajar. That night, Dana sat at the kitchen table, folders still unopened, her hands shaking. Everything felt unreal, like a web tightening around her. Someone didn't want the truth coming out. Someone who had been watching from the start. She opened the folder, half expecting it to be empty. But what she found stunned her. Surveillance photos. Old ones. Of Dana. Of Lily. Of their house. And then one final image tucked at the bottom. A picture of Rob, standing with a woman Dana had never seen before. Holding hands. At a location that looked eerily familiar. When Dana zoomed in on the background, her stomach dropped. It was the same abandoned lot where she had just found the message she remembers. Was Rob involved in something back then? Had he lied about not knowing Lily? Or was this all a setup, another layer of manipulation meant to make Dana question her reality? There was only one person left who might have answers. Someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Someone she had deliberately cut out of her life because of what they did on the day Lily vanished. Her own sister. But the secret Dana's sister was about to reveal would not only shatter everything she thought she knew, it would turn the entire case upside down. When Dana finally worked up the nerve to call her sister, Megan didn't answer. Not the first time. Not the second. Not even after the voicemail Dana left, her voice raw with desperation. The two of them hadn't spoken in over a decade, not since a falling out that had been bitter and final. But after everything Dana had discovered, she couldn't ignore the gnawing suspicion that Megan knew more than she had ever let on. Hours passed with no word. Then, just before midnight, Dana's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You're not the only one she lied to." The message came with an attached photo, grainy, low resolution, taken from a distance. It was Megan, standing outside a post office in upstate New York, visibly shaken, clutching what looked like a crumpled envelope in her hands. Someone was watching her too. And if that text was any indication, Megan was no longer just a forgotten part of Dana's past. She was now tangled in the same nightmare, whether she liked it or not. The next morning, Megan finally called. Her voice was strained, tense, as if she hadn't slept. She confirmed what Dana had suspected. The day before, she had received a letter in the mail. No return address, no name, just a folded sheet of paper with one chilling sentence. "You should have told her the truth." Megan confessed, haltingly, that there was something she had never shared. Not with the police. Not even with Dana. On the day Lily vanished, Megan had been at the house, supposedly just stopping by to drop off a gift. But she stayed longer than she admitted during the investigation, over an hour. And during that time, she saw Lily talking to someone through the backyard fence. Megan described the person as average-looking, someone forgettable, late 30s, jeans, navy blue baseball cap. She had assumed it was a neighbor or maybe a utility worker. But Lily seemed nervous, not quite frightened, but fidgety in a way that didn't sit right. Megan said she didn't say anything at the time because she thought it was nothing, and later, when Lily went missing, she panicked. She was afraid that if she admitted being there, she'd be blamed for not acting sooner. But what haunted Dana more than the confession was the timing. Why now? Why was Megan suddenly receiving threats after nearly 20 years of silence? Someone was orchestrating all of this, unfolding a story in chapters, forcing each player to confront the part they had unknowingly or knowingly played. It wasn't just about Lily's disappearance anymore. It was about guilt, silence, and a truth that had been splintered among people who never dared to speak to one another again. And just as Dana tried to piece together what Megan had seen that day, something else came crashing into her reality. Detective Carter, who had been unofficially helping her since the case was pulled from him, sent a message that shook everything loose. There's a new tip from a woman in Vermont. She claims her son had a childhood friend named Lily Reynolds. Says she saw your daughter's photo in a video thumbnail online and nearly fainted. Dana's blood ran cold. A friend? A living girl using the name Lily Reynolds? Carter said the woman was reluctant to speak further over the phone, afraid of being dragged into something bigger. But she agreed to meet in person. Dana drove 5 hours straight, barely blinking, mind racing with possibilities. But when she arrived at the address Carter had provided, a weathered farmhouse on a wooded road, she found the front door wide open, the house dark. No one answered. She pushed inside and called out. The place was empty, clearly lived in but recently abandoned. On the kitchen table was a single object, a flash drive. Dana took it, heart pounding, and left before anyone could see her. Back home, she plugged it into her laptop. The drive contained 2 video files. The first was silent, black and white, dated from 5 years earlier. It showed a girl, long dark hair, same eyes as Lily, playing cards at a table with an older woman. There was no audio, but the timestamp placed it years after Lily had vanished. Dana leaned closer, heart hammering. It was her. It had to be. The same tilt of the head, same nervous smile. She paused the video, zoomed in, and there, on the girl's wrist, was a bracelet. Plastic beads spelling out Lily. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed by something that felt like both relief and dread. But then came the second video. This one was shorter. 30 seconds. A man's voice, distorted and low, echoed over a black screen. You're getting too close. Stop now, or she disappears again, and this time for good. That was the moment Dana realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a mystery to be solved. It was an ongoing game, and someone was controlling the board. Every clue, every message, every reappearance of evidence, it was all deliberate, carefully timed, as if someone wanted her to keep digging, but only so far. The stakes had changed. She wasn't just trying to uncover a cold case. She was trying to outmaneuver someone who had been planning this for years. Someone with access to information no one should have. Someone who had eyes on her every move. Worse yet, as she scrolled through her emails later that night, Dana noticed something off. An alert. Someone had accessed her cloud account from a device in Atlanta, Georgia, hundreds of miles away. Photos were viewed. Files copied. A second later, her laptop screen flickered. Her mouse moved on its own. Then, in a blank text document, a message began to type out, letter by letter. You're not the only one who lost a daughter. The cursor blinked, waiting. Dana barely slept after the message appeared on her screen. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that blinking cursor, that final sentence. You're not the only one who lost a daughter. It repeated in her mind like a broken record, one she couldn't shut off. She unplugged the internet, disabled every smart device in her home, even covered the webcam with electrical tape. But the damage had already been done. Someone was inside her world now, not just watching, but infiltrating. And they weren't hiding it anymore. The very next morning, she noticed something chilling. Her front door, which she had locked before collapsing into a shallow, restless sleep, was cracked open. Only a sliver, but enough to send her pulse racing. Nothing in the house appeared touched, no broken windows, no forced entry. But there, on the living room coffee table, placed dead center as if deliberately displayed, was Lily's old stuffed elephant. Dana hadn't seen it in years. It had gone missing the same week Lily disappeared. She stared at it for a long time, her breathing growing shallow, her mind spiraling into every terrifying possibility. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a warning. She called the police, but they found no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no leads. The responding officer even hinted that it could have been a stress reaction, grief manifesting in strange ways. Dana wanted to scream. She wasn't imagining this. Someone was playing with her mind, leaving her relics from the past to unhinge her, to make her question what was real. She called Rob, demanding he come home, but his phone rang endlessly. Then it went straight to voicemail. She tried his office, no answer. She even called his mother to see if he'd been in touch. Nothing. That night, Rob didn't return home. At first, Dana thought maybe he was avoiding her. After all, things between them had been spiraling for weeks. But as the hours dragged on and the silence thickened, another possibility crept in. What if he had been taken? What if whoever was behind this had decided to make a move, and Rob was the first to vanish? She drove to his office herself, heart in her throat the whole way. The building was dark, deserted. But just before she turned to leave, she noticed a single light flickering in the upstairs break room. Curious and uneasy, she went up. The door was unlocked. The room was empty, except for a white envelope placed on the microwave. Her name was written on it in bold black marker. Inside was a single photo, grainy, surveillance style. It showed Rob sitting in a diner booth across from a man with a heavily lined face and a scar across his neck. The photo had a timestamp from 2 days prior, and in Rob's hand was a folder, the same folder Dana had found and hidden. Somehow, someone had photographed him with it even before she discovered it. Dana's knees buckled. Her thoughts raced. Had Rob been spying on her this entire time? Was he working with whoever was sending the messages? Or had he gotten too close and been silenced? On the back of the photo was a message. He asked too many questions. You're next. Dana left the building in a panic, looking over her shoulder the entire way. She started noticing things she hadn't before. A black SUV idling a little too long across the street from her house. A man in a hoodie who showed up at the grocery store and again at the gas station. Always just far enough to avoid being confronted, but close enough to be noticed. She didn't know if it was the same person each time, but they were watching. Following. She was sure of it. Every sound in the house set her on edge. The creak of the stairs. The buzz of the fridge. She started sleeping with the lights on and a kitchen knife tucked beneath her pillow. Every shadow in the hallway felt like it was about to move. Worse yet, Megan wasn't answering her phone anymore. After her confession, she had promised to send Dana a box of old photographs she kept in her attic, photos from the summer before Lily vanished, ones she thought might have clues buried in the background. But they never arrived. And now her line went straight to voicemail. Dana called the local sheriff in Megan's town, pretending to be concerned about a missed family reunion. The deputy on the line said they hadn't seen her in days. Her mailbox was full, and neighbors hadn't noticed her coming or going. Dana's chest tightened. First Rob, now Megan. One by one, the people connected to this secret were vanishing. She wondered, was it because of what they knew? Or because of what they were about to say? The questions kept stacking up. Who had taken the surveillance photo of Rob? Who was the scarred man sitting across from him? How did Lily's toy, gone for nearly 20 years, end up on her coffee table? And why was someone erasing the people closest to her the moment they got too close to the truth? But what scared Dana the most wasn't what she still didn't know. It was the feeling that she was being led somewhere. That every clue, every threat, every reappearance of a missing item wasn't random. It was planned, like a path laid out just for her. She was being herded toward something. Something dark. Something waiting. Then, 2 nights later, her phone buzzed again. No caller ID. No number. Just a video message. She hesitated. Pressed play. The screen lit up with shaky footage, clearly taken in secret. It showed a little girl, maybe 7 years old, sitting at a table in a dimly lit room. Her face was blurred, but Dana saw it immediately. The same posture, the same anxious fidgeting fingers. She was drawing, over and over, the same image. A tall man standing by a fence. The caption below read, "This isn't the first time she's drawn him. It won't be the last." And then the video cut to black. Dana couldn't tear her eyes away from the last frame of the video. The little girl, the repetitive drawing, the blurred face that still somehow looked so achingly familiar. She replayed it multiple times, pausing at every detail: the chipped wooden table, the flickering light above, the pattern of the curtains in the background. Then it struck her. The curtains. A pale yellow with tiny strawberries. They matched the ones in Lily's childhood bedroom. The bedroom she had redecorated right before Lily disappeared. It wasn't just that the girl in the video resembled her daughter. The video had been filmed inside her old home. But how? That room had been untouched for years. Dana hadn't been able to bring herself to walk back in there since the day she boxed up Lily's clothes and shut the door. Her hands trembled as she made her way down the hall and slowly turned the knob. Everything was just as she remembered, until she looked at the far corner. The curtains were gone. Someone had replaced them. The realization hit like ice water. The video hadn't been old. It had been filmed recently, using props that had once belonged in her house. That room wasn't hers anymore. It was being recreated. Somewhere else. By someone who knew every inch of it. Desperate and on the edge, Dana called the only person she thought she could trust, Detective Carter. He didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, her voice cracking, begging him to call her back. Minutes later, her phone rang. It was him. His tone was different this time. Cold. Measured. "You need to stop looking," he said. Dana froze. "What are you talking about?" she asked, heart thudding. "You're chasing ghosts," he replied. "You're putting yourself in danger, dragging others into it too." Dana couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You've been helping me, guiding me. Why are you saying this now?" But Carter didn't answer that question. Instead, he said something that chilled her to her bones. "You don't remember everything, Dana. Maybe it's time you ask yourself why." For hours after the call ended, Dana sat in silence, replaying every conversation she had with Carter over the last few weeks. He had always been one step ahead, knowing when a tip would come in, warning her just before things escalated, showing up right when she needed him. She had thought it was because he cared, because he never let go of the case. But what if he was never just following the investigation? What if he was leading it? In a surge of desperation, she dug through the folder again, the one Rob had found and hidden from her. It had dozens of clippings, police reports, and old therapy records from after Lily's disappearance. Near the bottom was a thin envelope marked "Do Not Release," sealed by court order. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a typewritten transcript of a psychological evaluation conducted on Dana 2 months after Lily vanished. The words blurred as she read them, but one sentence stood out so clearly it felt like it was shouted at her. Subject displays clear dissociative episodes and memory gaps surrounding key dates. Another line followed, possibility of unprocessed trauma obstructing factual recall of events. Dana dropped the pages, stumbling backward. Memory gaps? What had she forgotten? What truth had her mind blocked out all these years? The video, the messages, the stuffed elephant left on her table. Was it possible that someone wasn't trying to reveal the truth, but remind her of it? Then came the most crushing twist of all. Late that night, Dana received an email from a sender simply labeled Amar, the subject line. "You forgot what you did." Attached was a photo. It showed Dana, years younger, standing in the woods behind her old house, holding Lily's bracelet in one hand, staring down at something just out of frame. Her expression was blank. Lost. Behind her, in the distance, was Detective Carter, watching her. She stared at the image for what felt like hours, trying to will the memory back, but it remained just beyond her reach, like a word on the tip of her tongue. But it was her. The photo was real. She was there. And Carter had been too. Her phone buzzed again. A new video message. This one began with the now familiar voice, digitally distorted, but more aggressive this time. "You've been asking the wrong questions," it said. "You're not the hero in this story. You never were." The screen faded to black. Then a final message appeared. "The truth is buried." Just like she was. Dana collapsed into her chair, the weight of it all pressing down like a tidal wave. The truth hadn't just been lost. It had been buried. Deliberately. And now, for the first time, she had to ask herself the most terrifying question of all. What if she had buried it herself? Dana sat motionless in the dim light of her kitchen, the cryptic message from the video still lingering in the back of her mind like smoke. "You're not the hero in this story. You never were." It repeated like a curse, as if mocking her every step. She had gone from grieving mother to reluctant detective, clawing her way through layers of secrets, only to be told that she might have been the villain all along. And now, the stakes were unbearable. Every step forward risked revealing something about herself she wasn't sure she was strong enough to face. But she knew this wasn't over. It had only just begun. Later that night, her phone rang again, this time from a blocked number. She didn't answer at first, her hands frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. But on the fourth ring, something inside her forced her to pick up. A voice, heavily disguised, spoke calmly but coldly. "You want answers?" it said. "You'll get them. But only if you're willing to pay the price." Dana stayed silent, her breath trembling. The voice continued, "There's someone you trust who's been lying to you for years. Someone who made a deal to protect you from yourself. You want the truth? Then you have to confront him. Tonight." The line went dead, but Dana already knew who the voice meant. There was only one person who had stood by her in the early days, who had access to the investigation files, who had been feeding her just enough to keep her looking, but never enough to truly uncover what happened: Detective Carter. She couldn't understand his motives anymore. Was he trying to shield her from the pain of what really happened, or was he deliberately covering something up, something that would blow everything wide open? Fueled by adrenaline and a growing sense of dread, Dana drove through the rain-soaked streets to Carter's house. She didn't bother calling. He would have found a way to talk her out of coming. She needed answers now. When he opened the door and saw her standing there, drenched, shaking, and holding the printed photo of her in the woods with Lily's bracelet, his face changed. Not shocked, resigned. Like he had been expecting this. Dana demanded he explain everything, her voice cracking under the weight of it all. At first, he denied knowing anything, but when she showed him the photo, when she pressed him against the lies she knew he'd told, something inside him broke. Carter sat her down and told her the truth, or what he claimed was the truth. He said that on the night Lily disappeared, Dana had shown up at the police station in shock, confused, covered in dirt. She'd said Lily wandered off during a hike near their property, but her story kept shifting. The search teams found nothing. Then, a week later, someone broke into the evidence locker and destroyed the only physical proof they had: Dana's clothing from that night. Carter confessed that he was the one who kept the psychological report from going public. He said he didn't believe Dana had hurt Lily intentionally, but he feared what would happen if others got involved: media, politics, the courts. So, he protected her. Because he believed she was broken, not dangerous. But Dana didn't know what to believe anymore. If Carter was telling the truth, then she had somehow erased the worst night of her life from her memory. But if he was lying, if he was manipulating her to cover something bigger, then she might have been played since the beginning. She looked into his eyes, searching for even a flicker of guilt, something real. Instead, he gave her a folder she had never seen before. Inside were a series of redacted reports, surveillance photos, and handwritten notes. At the very bottom was a document dated 1 year after Lily's disappearance, labeled Witness Testimony, R. Monroe. It was Rob, Dana's husband, and what he claimed in that report shattered her completely. According to the document, Rob had seen something the night Lily vanished, something he never told Dana. He claimed he saw Lily speaking with someone at the edge of the woods, someone who looked like Megan. But the timestamp didn't add up. Megan wasn't supposed to be in town that day. The two of them hadn't even spoken for months. But the statement was there, signed and dated. Why had Rob never told her? Why had Megan claimed she hadn't seen Lily that summer at all? Dana's mind spiraled as she pieced together the implications. Had they both been lying to her? Working together to keep something buried? She had to confront Megan, but Megan was still missing. That night, another message appeared in her inbox. A file labeled Proof of Life. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a video, grainy, distorted, like it had been recorded with an old camcorder. Megan was tied to a chair in what looked like an abandoned barn. Her mouth was taped, but her eyes, wild and terrified, spoke volumes. A figure appeared behind her, face obscured, holding up a sign that read, "No more digging, or she disappears for good." Dana's chest collapsed under the weight of it all. She was now trapped between two impossible choices: follow the lead that could finally reveal what happened to Lily and risk Megan's life, or back away and continue living in the shadows of doubt, betrayal, and half-truths. If she kept going, someone else might vanish. But if she stopped now, she might never recover what was taken from her. And more importantly, she might never understand who she really was when everything fell apart. It was a moment no mother, no human being, should ever have to face. But Dana knew, deep down, that she couldn't stop.
Not now.
Not when she was this close. Even if the next move cost her everything. Dana barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, Megan's terrified face stared back at her from the grainy footage, that silent scream echoing in her mind. The threat had been crystal clear: stop digging, or Megan disappears for good. But Dana had gone too far to turn back now. And deep inside, she knew something bigger was happening, something far more twisted than just a missing daughter, a broken marriage, or a blurred-out childhood memory. She had brushed the surface of a secret that someone, maybe multiple people, had worked for years to keep buried. But why Megan? Why now? And who had the power to orchestrate all of this so precisely? She drove out to the woods the next morning, back to where it had all started. Her phone had GPS tagged the metadata from the latest video. It was vague, only giving a general area, but she recognized the pattern of hills and the bend in the trees. This was her family's old camping spot, a place they hadn't visited in over a decade. As she approached, she noticed something strange. A narrow trail, cleared recently, led deeper into the forest. It wasn't a path she remembered, not one she or Rob had ever used. As she followed it, phone flashlight in hand, the trail opened into a small clearing, and there, covered by vines and brush, was a trapdoor built into the ground. Panic tightened her chest. It looked almost exactly like the secret hatch the custodian had found at Lily's old elementary school. The design, the latch, everything matched. She pried it open and climbed down, her breath catching in her throat. The air was damp, metallic. Inside was a narrow tunnel with walls covered in old children's drawings, like someone had tried to recreate a classroom underground. And in the center, a single folding chair and table. On the table, another note: "You should have left this alone. Now everyone will know." Just then, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, heart racing, but it was Rob. Except he wasn't shocked. He wasn't panicked. He looked angry. And in that moment, everything shattered. He confessed before she even asked, said he never meant for it to go this far. That the night Lily disappeared, she had seen something she wasn't supposed to. Something involving Megan and a group of parents tied to a therapy program once funded by the school district, a now-defunct behavioral research study that had been quietly shut down after reports of unethical conditioning and forced isolation techniques. Lily had wandered into one of the study's hidden observation cabins while playing in the woods. She had seen the researchers. She had seen Megan, who had been brought on as a substitute aide during her teaching internship. Only Megan had agreed to assist in the program under a false name. Rob said he panicked when Lily told him.
He was part of the school board at the time.
If word got out, the lawsuits would have destroyed everything. His career. Their family. So he lied. Covered it up. And when Megan wanted to go to the police, she was threatened into silence. But Dana's breakdown, her memory gaps, they hadn't been a fluke. She had caught on. And someone had made sure she forgot. The horrifying truth began to take shape.
The school board. The research team.
The fake therapy sessions. The sealed court documents. Dana hadn't just stumbled into a personal tragedy. She had torn into a well-hidden conspiracy that had spanned years and involved people who had power, money, and connections to make evidence disappear and memories feel like lies. And Carter? He had been the insurance policy. Paid off by the district to monitor Dana, to keep her unstable enough to doubt herself, but lucid enough not to dig too far. But Carter had grown a conscience. Or something like it. That's why he warned her. That's why he tried to back off. But it was too late. Dana knew now that Megan hadn't disappeared by accident. She had been taken to send a message. Dana had scratched the surface, and now the entire foundation was about to collapse. Suddenly, Rob's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then went pale. Dana grabbed it and saw the message. She knows too much. Fix it. Or we will. Her stomach turned. This wasn't over. It was only escalating. And now she was out of time. As she fled the tunnel, heart thundering, she knew they were watching. All of them. The cameras. The trackers. The shadows that had been trailing her car since the first note appeared in that childhood book. She had uncovered the ugly roots of something massive, something systemic. And now, the only question left was whether she could expose it before it buried her for good. The cold wind tore through the trees as Dana approached the derelict community center on the edge of the abandoned school district property, once the hub of educational reform, now a rotting shell forgotten by time. The GPS signal that pinged from Megan's hidden phone had led her here, though she knew it wasn't just about rescuing her old friend anymore. This was the place where everything had started, the last stronghold for the people who had stolen her daughter, manipulated her memories, and buried the truth under a mountain of lies. As she pushed open the rusted double doors, the sound of metal groaning echoed through the empty halls. Her flashlight flickered against peeling murals and dust-covered desks, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. The atmosphere was electric. Something terrible was about to happen, but Dana wasn't turning back. In the main auditorium, the room was set like a stage. Folding chairs formed a ring, each marked with a name. At the center, bound to a wheelchair, was Megan, barely conscious, her eyes fluttering open at the sound of Dana's footsteps. Standing behind her, arms folded, was someone Dana had never expected, Principal Howard, the same woman who had retired quietly after Lily's disappearance, vanishing into obscurity before Dana ever had the chance to question her. Howard didn't flinch at Dana's entrance. In fact, she smiled. That cold, hollow smile that had once comforted parents during PTA meetings now sent a chill down Dana's spine. Howard began talking like she'd been rehearsing for this moment. She explained that years ago, the district had partnered with a behavioral development initiative aimed at identifying gifted children and streamlining their learning through experimental environments. But when the program was quietly defunded after a lawsuit, rather than shut it down, Howard and a handful of others kept it alive in secret, driven by belief, pride, and eventually, desperation. Megan had volunteered as a data collector, but when she realized the methods were crossing a line, keeping children isolated, manipulating their emotions, conditioning them like test subjects, she tried to blow the whistle. That's when she became a threat. But Lily had wandered in during one of their sessions. Not because of neglect. Not because Dana had done anything wrong. She was just a curious, bright little girl who saw too much. The program couldn't afford exposure. So they staged a disappearance. A cleanup. And then used Dana's grief and mental state to discredit her, to keep her isolated, to make her doubt everything. They fed her just enough hope to keep her distracted, but never enough to piece it together, until now. As Howard circled Megan's chair, Dana noticed something behind the old stage curtain, a soft glow. She stepped back slowly, inching toward it. Howard didn't stop her. It was as if she wanted Dana to see. Behind the curtain was a server rack, old but still running, powered by a generator. Dozens of labeled hard drives and monitors scrolled through surveillance footage, including one feed looping the woods behind Dana's house, live. Dana's voice caught in her throat. They had been watching her for years. Every move, every breakdown, every sleepless night. All of it, monitored, recorded, archived. In that instant, it all clicked. The notebooks Lily had scribbled in before she disappeared. The drawings Dana had dismissed as childish. They weren't fantasy, they were maps, diagrams, observations of what she had seen. And the note in the book that started it all? It wasn't a message from beyond. It was a breadcrumb Lily had left behind before they took her. A message not just to Dana, but to the world. Howard approached, placing a folder on the table in front of Dana. Inside were signed agreements, documents implicating nearly a dozen district officials, doctors, and educators. Some of them still active in different states. The conspiracy wasn't local. It was national. And then Howard said something that froze Dana's blood. "She's not gone, Dana. She never was. We moved her. We watched her grow. She's still out there, protected, untouched. We called it relocation.
You call it kidnapping.
But one day, maybe, you'll thank us." Dana's rage boiled over. She lunged for the folder, then toward Megan, untying her, adrenaline overriding fear. As she did, the lights flickered. Sirens wailed in the distance. Carter had gotten her message. Backup was coming. But Howard didn't flinch. She pulled out a vial from her coat and swallowed something before Dana could react. Within seconds, her body convulsed. She dropped to the floor, twitching, her lips curled in a satisfied smile. She had silenced herself before she could be taken alive. As police swarmed the building, securing the servers, rescuing Megan, and seizing files, Dana stood in the center of a chaos, unable to move. She had the evidence. She had the truth. But she didn't have Lily, not yet. Then, just as the EMTs were loading Megan into the ambulance, she whispered something that made Dana collapse to her knees. "Lily called me last year. She's alive. But they changed her name." It was 2 months later when Dana stood outside the modest farmhouse in northern Vermont, hands trembling as she reached for the faded brass knocker. The morning air was crisp, heavy with dew, and the quiet was unnerving. Not for its silence, but for how unfamiliar peace now felt after months of unraveling horror. In her other hand was a small stack of documents, the leaked files from the underground program, declassified by federal investigators and splashed across national news networks under headlines like "Secret School Experiment Exposed" and "District Cover-Up Tied to Missing Children Cold Cases."
But none of that mattered now.
None of the trending hashtags, the court hearings, or the string of arrested officials, because standing on the other side of that door, according to everything Megan had told her, was Lily. Not the little girl Dana remembered clutching her hand on the playground, but a young woman raised under a different name, in a different world, believing the people who told her she had no family left. The last few weeks had been a blur. Megan, once released from protective custody, had pieced together the final trail using access codes she had memorized during her time inside the program. Together with Carter, now a disgraced psychologist turned whistleblower, they tracked down the relocation files that had been locked behind layers of encrypted red tape. The records showed that Lily had been moved through a series of foster care placements under state supervision, her identity scrubbed and reconstructed using school transfer loopholes and juvenile guardianship orders. But what chilled Dana most was the discovery that Lily had never been adopted, not because no one wanted her, but because the program had deliberately ensured she'd stay off the grid. She was monitored, placed with carefully selected families, and told the story that her biological mother had died in a car crash. It was easier to erase a person than deal with the fallout of the truth. Dana took a shaky breath as the door creaked open. A teenage girl stood there, no longer the wide-eyed child from the photos, but unmistakably Lily. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same cautious expression, the same dimple on her left cheek that only showed when she wasn't trying to hide it. She didn't speak at first, just stared. Dana wasn't sure what to say. She had rehearsed it 1,000 times, but now her voice failed her. Finally, Lily broke the silence with a question that shattered the last of Dana's composure. "Do I know you?" What followed wasn't a tearful reunion filled with movie-perfect embraces or sweeping background music. It was awkward,
Raw.
tentative. Dana explained who she was, showed Lily the birth certificate, the hospital photo, the stuffed animal Lily had clung to as a toddler, saved all these years in a cedar box. And slowly, something shifted in Lily's eyes. Recognition flickered, not just from memories, but from the emotional weight that tethered them both to a truth no one else could understand. They sat together on the porch, not saying much, but somehow saying everything. There were too many missing years to fill in one afternoon. Too many wounds that wouldn't heal with answers alone. But it was a beginning. Later that evening, as Dana prepared to leave, Lily handed her something she hadn't expected. A drawing. A crude, childlike sketch of a woman with dark hair standing under a tree, holding a book. "I used to draw this all the time when I was little," Lily said quietly. "I never knew who she was. I think it was you." Dana's eyes welled with tears. For the first time since Lily vanished, she finally believed she hadn't imagined the connection. It had survived, somehow, across time and silence and lies. The story didn't end with fireworks or final justice. Most of the people responsible would spend years in litigation, protected by legal loopholes and the slow churn of the system. But the truth was out. Parents across the country began asking more questions. Forgotten files were reopened. Former students from the program came forward, revealing similar gaps in memory, mysterious placements, and recurring dreams of underground rooms. The headlines faded eventually, as they always do, but Dana's story, "Mom finds hidden note in childhood book, uncovers nationwide secret," continued to echo in online forums, documentaries, and late-night YouTube deep dives. As for Dana and Lily, the road ahead wasn't clear. They didn't force the idea of mother and daughter. They began with coffee, weekend visits, emails that turned into phone calls that turned into letters filled with quiet moments and memories slowly reassembled. Dana had spent years chasing the past, digging through shadows, and unraveling a mystery so dark it nearly consumed her. But in the end, she hadn't found closure. She had found something better. Proof that love, no matter how deeply buried, doesn't disappear. It leaves traces, drawings,
Notes.
echoes. And just as Dana started her car to head home, she glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Lily watching her from the porch. She smiled, that same dimple showing just for a second. But as she turned the corner, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Lily wasn't the only one. And suddenly, Dana realized the story wasn't over. Not even close.